God our Father, we again thank you for allowing us to come together to talk about and make decisions about our city, our town, our place of dwelling. We thank you, oh God, that you give us the opportunity and the mindset to do business together. We pray now you unite us, oh God, as one, that we'll be able to take care of the business of this city. We thank you for all those that are jealous, those that have traveled far and near. We pray that you bless them also. But bless the minds and the hearts of these people, oh God, as they come together as one for the betterment. We give you the praise, glory, and honor, for we ask this in Jesus' name. Everybody say amen.
Amen.
I'm going to turn this over to
This is a workshop, hosted by the city commissioners, and we're glad everyone is here tonight. We're glad to see you. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of information out there for you. And just at this time, I'll just introduce whoever needs to be introduced.
Okay, well, the other thing I want to do is make sure that everyone that comes into the building, please sign in. Everyone that comes into the building, please sign in. Okay, now after you break it, we sign in. We're going to turn it over now to Mr. Jim Anderson, that he might introduce those that are going to be speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the projects that we have going right now within the community. The first one is we had two water projects that we are proud to say we just completed in Fort St. Joe. One was a CDBG grant, which is a Community Development Block Grant. Thanks to the folks at the Department of Economic Opportunity for $650,000. That was put directly back into water lines that were put back into North Fort St. Joe. So that has been completed. The other part was a grant came from the Water Management District. The Northwest Florida Water Management District also stepped up and gave us a grant for $80,000. So that one is completed as well. So those two projects we're proud to say have just been completed. Langston Drive sidewalks. With FDOT, about the time you forget about it, you finally get your money. This has been a project's been working on, the mayor's been working on for about 5 years. We're finally getting to the point, we got word the other day, it can't get above bid. FDOT graciously has given us the additional money so we can say that project is about to proceed. So we're finally going to get some sidewalks on Langston Drive. And the last project we've been working on is the MLK landscaping. Mr. Langston's been instrumental in this. As you can see this past week, you can see the plants have been put into place in irrigation, so that has been done as well. So, at this point, what we also want to do was to talk just briefly to you about our water quality, where we came, where we're at. We get a lot of questions about the water plant and the distribution lines. So first, I want to introduce you to Mr. Larry McClellan. He actually runs our water plant. The water plant was put on line in 2009, and I'll turn it over to Mr. McClellan to tell us what he's done.
Yeah, I'd like to speak about the work plan. The city has faced many obstacles since the surface water plan went online in September 2009. Those obstacles come with the perception of the water, drinking water quality, and to the support. With the change from groundwater to surface water, came a change in the basic chemistry of water we treat. In the beginning, it's safe to say there was a big learning curve for us in the water plant. Our staff did face a lot of challenges. And, but with persistence and the city's help, they were giving us the tools that we needed to overcome those obstacles. And today we operate a plant that's efficient and meets all the criteria that we need. Our drinking water meets all federal and state requirements, and we have had no exceedance of any primary water quality standards set forth by the EPA. Our state certified operators at the plant strive to provide the best drinking water possible and do take pride in seeing that you, the customer, have the utmost confidence in your water. We do feel the future is bright for the city of Fort St. Joe water system, and we will continue to improve and deliver our customers the safe, clean drinking water they deserve.
Also, the Water Management District has been gracious to helping with the water plant. They have actually helped out with the lime pre-treatment process that has drastically helped the water quality and the water plant that's actually going out to the distribution system. Larry, thank you, Larry, for the job you've done out there with the water plant. We also provided a copy of the water quality report. That is actually on our website as well, if anybody wants to see that, but that is there as well. At this time, I'll get John to talk to you briefly about the distribution system and the line replacement.
I will, thank you, Mr. Anderson. My name is John Graham, I'm Public Works Director for the City of Port San Diego, and our group is responsible for the infrastructure that is in the ground. We don't make the water, but we do convey it, what Larry makes in the plant. So, as with any large, project, this has taken time, to put together. But within the last 8 years, we've replaced about 26,000 linear feet of water line in the North Port San Diego area. It's either integral to or internal to. So that equates to about 5 miles of pipe. It's a pretty good amount. It's actually all of it. We finished that up with, as Jim mentioned earlier, the CDBG project was recently completed along the Northwest Florida Water Management District. So from the service lines, to the streets, to the main lines, all that's new. Now, having said that, we still have complaints from time to time on water quality. And that's what I want to discuss a little bit with everyone in the room. What Public Works has found is one of 3 typical culprits. Yes, ma'am?
No, not you. Just.
One of 3 potential culprits is relates to, what we'll call discolored water. What we generally find is the internal plumbing of the home, and it's a galvanized type line from the meter to either inside the house or underneath, has been the #1 target that we see. Galvanized line, as Mr. McClain indicated earlier, was a transition between groundwater and surface water. And there was a lot of things that were taking place at that point. So that's one of them. The second issue you've seen is hot water heaters. A hot water heater is just a vessel. So that vessel is going to accumulate iron and different fallout at the bottom of that tank. That will discolor water as well, especially if you see it primarily more on the hot water side versus the cold. That's usually a good indicator for that. The third thing, which we see but not a lot of, is if a house has a filtration system on the filter. We've seen those go bad, and the filters or cartridges weren't changed properly, and that will discolor as well. Again, the primary culprit is the galvanized piping that a lot of homes in our service area, from Overstreet to Oak Road, have, just given the time frame they were built. So, if there's any questions that we can do at Public Works, or if the customer has a complaint, by all means, please call, and we'll be glad to come out and do what we can do, at least maybe identify the problem for you. So, those are the things we've typically seen. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has any as it relates to that.
I have one. Is there any programs that we're going to bring forth that maybe we can assist some of those homeowners, aged maybe, someone that's been there for many years? Is there any programs that we could seek out or actually might be able to help them out?
If there is, I'm not aware of any, Chester. I say that because when you start talking about not on public land, this is all private. Once it crosses the water meter, I'm really not aware of, at least in the state or federal dollars that would cover that. So there might be some private grants that people can apply for, but not that I'm aware of.
The only reason I ask is because there's some of those people that are in the lighted area, the lighted house, been there for many years, and they might not be able to afford that type of help.
Sure.
The city maybe can help us seek out some kind of
Well,
age.
again, I'm not aware of it. I'm not saying nothing out there exists, but I would think, again, because it's on private land, there might be some other foundation or something such as that.
Thank you, John. At this point, we want to introduce the city planner, Ray Greer. Ray is here today. He has actually been tasked to help us walk us through the process, what would need to be done for the proposed land use map amendment and the rezoning.
Good evening. I'm Ray Greer. I work with Stantec. I'm a land use planner. And I've been tasked with working on this plan. And this plan I'm talking about is the North Port San Diego Area Project Coalition plan. And John Henry is going to go over the plan. He worked on and developing this plan. And what it is, what it entails. What I want to do after he gets done is talk a little bit about how we would implement it, what it means. There's some maps at the back of the room. The area that it encompasses is 18 and a half acres, it's 108 privately owned parcels. And what we'd be looking at is changing the land uses on that, those 108 parcels, to be able to implement the plan that John's going to kind of go over, show you what it is, kind of talk to you a little bit about what it means. And then I'll talk to you about regulatory, how we would do it. And then what we want to do is turn it over to you to get your questions, your opinions, and really have a discussion of what this plan means and how it would affect you as being the private property owners that live in this area. And so what I'd like to do now is turn it over to John and then go over it, and then I'll go over a little bit after him on the regulatory call.
Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you very much for coming this evening. What I'm going to talk to you about is something that I presented back in December last year to the Port St. Joe Redevelopment Agency, which was the PAC's plan for redeveloping Martin Luther King Boulevard. And those of you who were there, it was quite a lengthy, detailed plan with a lot of examples. I've kind of culled it a bit so that we can get to the real nub of the matter here. But if we need to, we can keep going. But I think this is probably going to, I'm hoping this will give us enough information to have a conversation. So, what is the opportunity for North Port St. Joe that arose from the work that the community had done starting in 2016 through 3 public meetings and through other conversations, through retreats and so on and so forth? What was the opportunity that was identified? Well, to re-establish the commercial and community centre in North Port St. Joe. That was an opportunity that the community identified and said they were very much behind and would want to see as a priority. The community also talked about providing uses in support of the new port. It's been part of everybody's conversation at these kind of meetings for a long time now. But we recognise that the community recognises that being so close to the port, being an integral part of the city itself, there's lots of opportunities that arise from the port. The opportunity helps the community to eliminate the crippling blight that drives down the value of the community assets. And when I say community assets, I'm talking about everybody in Port St. Joe, but specifically those in North Port St. Joe. And to increase substantially the county tax base, and we'll talk about taxes this evening because I know that there are some concerns about that. We want to be absolutely clear about what this means. But ultimately, and we have to talk about this ultimately, if there was a lively, vibrant North Port St. Joe, and with people's retail in North Port St. Joe, and all those other elements of the redevelopment of the area, would inevitably increase taxes for the whole base of the community. But as I say, we'll talk about that in more detail later and how that would work. And to restore the pride of an historic regional neighbourhood. So the reason that we were at the CRA back in this December was because the current mixed-use land use for Martin Luther King Boulevard, and you'll see it shown, you can look at this quite independently of this discussion, you can see it shown on boards at the back of the room. That current district, which is already there, and has been there for some years, and is sort of part of the 2020 future land use map, it does not, it's insufficient to encourage the kind of development that would be needed to regenerate what we saw, what we would like to see, or what the community would like to see in North Port St. Joe. It provides minimal development guidelines, and it doesn't allow the city to offer incentives to eliminate blight. Those were suggestions made at meetings, by the way. One of the reasons it was felt that this kind of zoning that I'm going to show you was put on the table, it would give the city opportunity to offer specific incentives related only to Martin Luther King Boulevard. And only a detailed plan for Martin Luther King Boulevard can address these kind of shortcomings that the basic land use has, which was precisely what we went about trying to do. And the purpose of the work was to create a development-friendly land use with guidelines that are unique to the Martin Luther King Boulevard. And to ensure that the guidelines are consistent with the 10-year-old comprehensive plan by amending or updating it. And the point I made then still exists. When that comprehensive plan was put together, there is very little mention of it, for all sorts of reasons, very little mention of North Port St. Joe and what the comprehensive plan for North Port St. Joe would have for that area, or what the comprehensive plan would have for North Port St. Joe. And the purpose of the work is to empower the community to pursue the financial support necessary to rebuild the corridor's infrastructure and develop its vacant lots. And this is a lot to do with the practicalities of the issue at hand, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well, very quickly. So, what were the recommendations for doing things next? The Community Redevelopment Agency has to approve the detailed redevelopment plan at Martin Luther King Boulevard. It did at the time. The city has to endorse these approvals and proceed with various amendments necessary to execute the plan. That's why we were eager that the city would talk to its planning consultant to advise on that side of things. That's not something we would get involved in. And here's what the reason we're talking about the infrastructure, because the community has to prepare a full funding application for submittal to Triumph Gulf Coast Incorporated. We've talked a long time in meetings and amongst PAC meetings and that sort of thing about the need to bring outside support in. This city's not wealthy enough to renew the infrastructure that is required to make Martin Luther King once again an effective commercial centre. And if it's going to make it an important commercial centre, to introduce the mixed uses, housing, retail, and other commercial uses, it's not going to be able to attract that if the infrastructure is as it is at the moment, and the city just doesn't have resources to do that. There are not enough people living in Port St. Joe. Triumph Gulf Coast Incorporated is there, if you look at what they're for, to provide support for precisely this sort of infrastructure. And it would be a great shame if we ignored the opportunity that that fund offers us now. This is a precursor of that submittal. Submittal comes using the information from this and uses the community's enthusiasm as a means of showing Triumph Gulf Coast Incorporated they should be top of the list for support from this when you look at the criteria that applies to them. And our ultimate goal is really to answer the question, why does Martin Luther King look like this when another part of the town is able to boast this kind of infrastructure, this kind of attention, and the sort of money that is being generated by business owners and property owners on Reed Avenue. This is just to remind you what was talked about and revealed in 2016, the 2016 conceptual plan, which just highlights the areas that we felt were most important, the community felt really were most important. Martin Luther King, connections to Reed Avenue, the re-energisation of this particular site here, and various other smaller areas. Just to remind you what the community went through almost 3 years ago now. So listening to the 2016 priorities, to focused attention on restoring Martin Luther King. That was one of the main priorities, to preserve its character by all sorts of means, to restore its commercial heart while providing places for people to live, and to renew and improve the boulevard's infrastructure. So all of this goes back really to the earliest times that we started to come together as a group. And here's the community's vision. They were looking for places we can sit and meet comfortably, more protection from weather, and wider sidewalks, buildings with character, tree-lined streets, and affordable housing for all age groups. And these are just examples of all of those things being provided in other communities. And there is no reason why this community can't have these things as their aspiration, just like many other communities have had. The planning priorities were safe sidewalks with sufficient room for people to walk along, distinctive corners, creative mixed use, residential above retail, and clustered homes if possible in the more residential part of Martin Luther King Boulevard. These are the things that were talked about, and all that these pictures do is reflect what people said. So the Port St. Joe future land use map, we can skate over quickly. There it is again, as you see, it's a board at the back, along with many other boards, which I ask you to have a look at when you get a chance. The problem with it is that it's one size fits all. It's a single land use that's designed really to be able to offer everything to everybody within its own constraints. And that's not quite what the community would like to see. And it's also such a low density with the lots the size that they are that it's very difficult for any development opportunity to be realised. It also has complex and restrictive parking rules. That's the land use regulations as a whole, and we would try and adapt the restrictive parking rules to precisely how mixed use could work. And that's again open for discussion and based on the table's recommendation. It's important though to the future of the place. So, comparing the land use boundaries, this is the boundary that currently covers a proportion of the Martin Luther King Boulevard commercial area. Our intention was to widen that area because there's more than just the front edge of that that's impacted. There are homes along the side streets that run away from Martin Luther King that are impacted and part of the commercial opportunities that could be available. So we moved from a zone that was 125 feet wide, 125 feet from the centre line, 250 feet north, to 275 feet. And I'll show you why that's very important, widening this area. And it's about transition from a commercial area to a residential area. There are a lot of different lot types within this boundary. I counted them all. The 25 and 30 foot by 100 foot lots, the 55 by 50 foot lots, and so on and so forth. You can see that the 50 to 55, 110 to 117.5 lots are by far and away the most prevalent. And there are other ones that are specifically aimed at residential. And then these super lots where large pieces of land enable the owners of those pieces of land to put something more significant on them. And the idea of anything like zoning is to encourage people to build, particularly empty lots. So there's a total of 108 lots in all, spanning those different land uses. we created, at the request of the community, three areas. First of all, one that is predominantly where retail would be the most important element in the mixed-use mix. That's between Avenue A and Avenue B, the primary retail zone. And then preserving the more residential nature of Martin Luther King Boulevard beyond that area, the second zone, which is the primary residential zone. So the community didn't want to change the whole way in which Martin Luther King operates at the moment, or where it used to operate when it was a more stronger commercial area, with the retail zone slightly separated from the residential zone. And then these shoulder areas where the commercial elements start to step down in height and intensity so that they fit into the neighborhood more effectively. It's not an extreme difference between a commercial type building and a regular residential building, but a series of steps. And that's the purpose of these green areas that I've got up there, which we just call the transitional zone. That's why we increased the size of this, to engage more residents who would be affected by Martin Luther King Boulevard, but showing them the simple way of making that contact very much more comfortable than it could otherwise be. So these zones are aimed at creating perhaps different standards of sidewalks, building heights, density, and incentives appropriate to each zone. And again, this idea came out because we wanted to see flexibility. The community wanted to see flexibility. They wanted to see something that could be flexible for the people who own the properties or want to improve them, and flexible to react to changes in the economy and the market over a period of many, many years. And the transitional zone also allows infrastructure to be extended into the surrounding neighbourhood. And that's deliberately aimed at the ability to raise funding to extend infrastructure as we move from this area and out into the neighbourhood. So that the infrastructure improvements would cover the whole of that area and enable us to move forward in future years, or maybe in one application to improve the infrastructure throughout the community. And here's just a little diagram to show how that stepping works. So this is as if we were standing at the bottom of Martin Luther King Boulevard looking at a shop on the left-hand side, so a building on the left-hand side where Avenue C intersects Martin Luther King Boulevard. And you see, in this one I've shown a 3 stories of residential over a single story of retail on Martin Luther King Boulevard itself, and as you move away through the different zones, that steps down to lower heights. And you can see the existing home that's in that location at the moment is just a single floor with pitched roof on it, and it's much more comfortable in running up to the buildings before it. So one of the things that we're interested in is lot aggregation or land assembly, which is where various people come together or to create larger lots or grouping lots. That's something that's done in most places where there are relatively small lots, where you can group lots to make a larger building plan. And we did some ideas, which I won't linger on, but just some ideas about how that starts to provide a very special place, not a series of buildings, but a single set of buildings that are consistent with each other, with apartments above. And it shows how by improving or increasing the density with 3 floors, or maybe even 4 floors, depending on how they're designed, the existing density for all of those lots would allow 7 residential homes using the current allowance. If we were able to change the zoning to increase that density, to allow this kind of property on the 3-floor site, you'd be able to double the number of homes and you'd be closer, it's certainly closer and hopefully more than closer in attracting a development to that site, allowing development to take place. I mean, if there was a 4th floor above, that would allow 19 homes to be above 7,300 square foot retail, which is basically just all the retail space on the ground floor of that structure. And then we took 2 other lots further up Martin Luther King to look at how residential might work on 2 lots aggregated. So these are townhomes that run on those 2 lots when they're joined together. And at the moment they would allow, with 3 floors, 12 homes. And this layout with improved zoning, including car parking and all that's needed, would allow 16 homes. Which in itself, it's only 4 more, but it's a large proportionate increase in the number of homes that you can get from the land, and therefore make it more of a development prospect. And that idea, even if there is not an aggregation of those 2 lots, you still have the opportunity to build some townhomes with parking in the same location, because it's a symmetrical plan. Now, the road design, the existing primary retail corridor is stark and simple. The sidewalks are 5 foot wide, and there's a parking lane of 8 foot, and the travel lanes on either side are 12 foot each, allowing curb to curb 40 feet. Now, all of these things, all these are just numbers, but the fact is that when you compare that to a conventional commercial street, the street is just too narrow, or let me put it this way, the sidewalk is too narrow, the travel lanes might be fine, but it's unlikely that a developer would be able to come in and build the sort of retail that you would all like to see, the commercial space that you would all like to see, with a 5 foot sidewalk running along it. So that's why we started to look at what that would do, and I'm just going to run through this quickly. So by increasing the sidewalk to 13 feet, increasing the infrastructure that people walk along to 13 feet, allows that to become once again a more comfortable street for people to be. People that we talked to in the meetings all talked about needing more shade, more protection for pedestrians to encourage people to walk. But within the 40-foot curb to curb crossing, a lot of that can be incorporated, but the 13-foot sidewalk would indeed require the developer, the person or the lot owner when they're developing it, to give up some of their space at the frontage, which would be a kind of setback, to increase the size of those sidewalks. That's just a practical approach to it. And here's an illustration from above of how this works. So this assumes that some of the properties are developed, the green ones are developed, and that shows that you can increase the sidewalk there. And if the other properties are yet to be developed, they remain with a smaller sidewalk until they are developed one day, if ever. So this isn't a thing that is one size fits all in that respect. It's quite possible to combine the two sizes and make developed areas, attractive. The lot line is the existing one at the moment, and that's not being taken away. It still exists for everybody who's leaving their property as it is, but where there's new development, there is a setback that allows sidewalk to go on it. That's the proposal. So 50-foot right of way in total. And that's with the 13-foot sidewalk, which is an 8-foot setback on the property. And in the residential area, it's slightly different. It's a 15-foot sidewalk, which allows parking and trees, and a 10-foot setback. But in return for that 10-foot setback, the property becomes increasingly more valuable as a residential area, more relaxed, more nicer, easier to put trees in, and so on and so forth. And the other thing that becomes much more important in this plan is the use of the alleyways. And really that's to do with improving the infrastructure there as well, so that the alleyways can be used by people to walk or ride or drive safely along them more consistently, and it adds to the overall experience within that part of the community. And we just picked out these as examples of the kind of ways in which people have animated their alleyways and done things with them. And public spaces, because they're a primary requirement of everybody, it's just working out what can be done on Martin Luther King Boulevard in this instance. You need available vacant land. This is one way one community did it, is to shield the cars off for a weekend and put plastic carpet down. We're not going to do that, but that's definitely something we need, is a vacant land to achieve some of this. Provide shade, social connection, in other words, places where people can stand, chat, sit and chat, and talk to each other. And continuity, in other words, showing how a space can flow across the road without disturbing it at all, but making it look as if it's a single open space. Those are things that people liked a lot, and so we tried to see how you might do it at the moment on Martin Luther King Boulevard, using the alleyways to a certain extent to provide that public space. So this is where lots which are split by alleys could have the development that draws people to the area, like retail, restaurants, that kind of thing. And then the public space area comes by allowing the alleyways to be paved at their ends to help create that sense of a public area. And that's a simple thing to do when there is no empty land available, or let us say free land. So I'm telling you all of this because this is why rezoning is so important, that when it starts to allow this kind of desire in the community, this kind of ambition, social connection in those areas, continuity by just flowing that paving across the street. That's one way of doing it. Those are the things that one would hope that, the city would be interested in seeing happen here, and interested in seeing the way in which the community would respond. And we would hope that we're meeting the kind of desires that community has shown in public meetings that we've attended all of us. And then finally, parking. When we start to address the infrastructure, one of the things we must address at the same time is parking. It's straightforward at the moment because there's plenty of spaces, but once you start to put infrastructure and you start to have to define within that infrastructure the number of spaces you can create. Just to give you a sense of this, there's no magic about any of these numbers. It just creates areas which you could use for parking spaces once development happens, on street and of course off street behind developed buildings. In the primary residential retail zone, 133, and in the primary residential zone, by that as well, 184 on-street parking spaces. It doesn't seem possible when you walk down the street at the moment, but once they're organised and properly constructed, that's the sort of thing that improves a neighbourhood. And that just illustrates how that can work. On-street parking by arranging the infrastructure in such a way that it's wide enough that you can put the parking in a space like that at the moment. You can do it now, but it's not, in order to maximise the parking, you have to do it very, very carefully and delineate it, and that makes it easier for people to see where to park and how to park. tree planters, off-street parking, wherever development is happening, always trying to create enough off-street parking there to help that development. And in just that lot there, there's 56 parking spaces, assuming that there's off-street development, some off-street parking, and on-street parking. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry it takes so long, but I have to emphasise there's a lot of work gone into this by the community, not me, by the community. And the community has talked a lot about what it wants to see on Martin Luther King Boulevard. It is our recommendation that it's redeveloped in a manner that does require an improved zoning that is there at the moment, which doesn't really allow that kind of thing, the kind of dream the community has, to come forward.
Before I talk about the regulatory process, of how to actually implement this, is there any questions for John regarding the plan that he just showed?
Gave first step, second step, it was the Martin Luther King coming from Martin Luther King
Yes.
to go to the 49 from Martin Luther King to the Avenue D.
Yeah.
And then having the other avenues like following. More interest is placed on the Martin Luther King area. So currently we are entering on to St. Joe. It's in the CRA. Why separate?
Well, we're not. So the stepping down is about the intensity, the amount of activity. The busiest place on Martin Luther King is on Martin Luther King itself. The quieter place is the one on the side streets running away from it. And that's why we step down. We're not disconnecting anything. We're actually connecting it more effectively. So that people don't think when they stand and look at the back of the building that it's 3 stories high. My home is only 1 story high, but it's overshadowing. That's the most important thing, avoiding that overshadowing. We're not manipulating anything in here at all. We're just saying step down, which is a typical way for a community to allow commercial space to work with residential space.
The rezoning, move the lines, only limited from Martin Luther King to Highway 98, and it's not including the whole community.
The total rezoning, because the rest of the rezoning is correct, it's residential, it's okay at the moment. This is just purely the commercial area and over some residential to allow them this step zoning near them. But it doesn't necessarily require further zoning right now. I don't know, maybe we haven't done a study on that, to be honest. That's not, but we're not, it's already zoned residential. I think it's
No,
R3.
it's not, it's, well, a portion is residential and commercial.
Well, commercial is on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's there. And it's the underlying zone. You can actually, Ray can talk better to that than me. But that underlying zone, I believe, remains. These are overlay districts.
And then my question is, the residential portion of, where would those go? When you zone it commercial?
The zone is a residential zone, predominantly residential zone, and when someone comes to redevelop that and says, I want to do another house exactly the same as mine, but better, there's nothing to stop them doing it. Zoning doesn't prevent them from that. They can do that. And that would be in concurrence with what's going on there at the moment. At the moment, the current mixed-use zoning kind of is one use, but sort of everything's supposed to fit into it. It doesn't really help things. That's the problem with it. But you can, if you're in a home and you want to replace it with another home, you can do that in the zoning for the residential area. I'm not sure many people will be affected in the primarily retail area, commercial area. There's no displacement of anybody here by this zoning. Let's be clear about that. It's really important,
Yeah.
There's nothing to force you doing anything. If you don't do anything, that's your prerogative. If you want.
If it's zoned commercial, the ones that's in that area, that's already residential, that's living in residential housing, and what
Well,
we know.
really the change is not particularly useful down side streets for the developer. The developer is interested in Martin Luther King Boulevard itself. That's the principle of this, and that's what it's for. The zoning doesn't force anything to happen. Just like it's the mixed use zoning hasn't forced anything to happen. Nothing's happened, really. I mean, so
And it allows for both, residential and commercial to occur.
it's mixed use.
Because we've been in the new zones over 10 years now, and several one of the properties that's been purchased within that time, nothing been built on that property, but we have had in this area too, where renovation have taken place on one of the property owners on the name of one machine. And one individual taking his business and moving from the zone to St. George, just moved it down the street on Highway 98, and it's just been working. It's all it seems to me is that you need owners who want to build their property up, need to have their money to do just like the individuals who already have money and build their property.
That's what we need.
Not just burden on the individuals, because in the long run, this money got to be paid back into that.
That's what this means about. That's what we're in the process of doing right now. We're bringing out a lot of outside consultants in, and we also bring a lot of investors in to do just that. Because our community really don't have the money or the tip to do some of the things that we're asking to be done. So that's one of the reasons why we bring people in and we're getting their opinion on it. You understand what I'm saying? You don't actually want it to stay the same because, you know, you got a lot of businesses getting ready to come in, and if we don't take advantage and steer our own destiny, then allow other people to come in and do it for us.
But the residential, those residential.
You get confused with, see what you get confused with,
The residential.
you get confused with residential and commercial. They're separated. That's why we got this, the posters out right here to outline the separation of it. You see what I'm saying? And if you just pay attention to what you're saying is, we got a way of showing you the breakdown and how we are trying to make sure that nobody gets displaced.
I understand very good, John, you and I, this community, he and I worked on the expansion in 2003, so we know each other very well, it's the same. But I was concerned about the residents of Martin Luther King because I don't see 10 owners in here, property owners that lived on Martin Luther King today. And it's just raising a question, that's all it is.
I stay at 202 Avenue G. I stay on Martin King. I stay on the corner. And what she's saying, I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Okay, listen. One of the things that we're trying to prevent tonight is to get chaos started. All right? The answers and the questions that are put forth is based upon the rezoning. We're not here to displace anybody. All the PAC meetings that we've always had has nothing to do with displacement or moving somebody out of their area. It's about improvement, rezoning, so we can better our community. No one has ever been talked about or moved to a place where they think they have to move out. It is all about redevelopment so that we can bring back some of the characters that we've had in our community from the old days. What's already existing, if nobody wants to change, that's up to them. But we're not displacing anybody. The idea that's on the table for tonight is based upon how we can rezone and make our community better. We've had meetings after meetings after meetings, and we've asked everybody to come so that they can be educated on what we're doing. Thank you, John, and your brother.
Well, the money they spend over here, won't they come bring it over here and spend it over here too? They build up on the other side, why can't they come over here and build up? We ain't have no need to build up on the other side.
Sir, this is, sir, okay, good.
Look, this what's going on. First of all, City of Port St. Joe. We're working together trying to improve the entire Port St. Joe. We've been living in on MLK. It's been like this for years and years. But we're trying to bring some people in to try to improve our neighborhood, trying to make it grow and develop into something that we can be proud of. Yeah, we spend a lot of money in certain places because that's where most of the taxes are coming from. When we got businesses and everything that's generating all these taxes, of course they're gonna put it back into where they're making the money there. That's why we got to get involved in our community and try to make this thing flustered so that we can get some money, some tax money here on our side of town, on the north side, and bring some people in and redevelop it, and and you can be proud of, walk out your door. You won't be able to walk out your door and look around and say, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I see it all the time. They tearing down everything, ain't letting us rebuild over here, but they rebuilding over there. I see that every day. I've been here just as long as you have.
What?
I'm just being real. They building on the other side, same way you doing,
Well, you gotta
do, same thing over here. Listen, look at Washington High. Look at our gym.
Hey,
Look at our gym. Look at our gym.
You gotta start somewhere.
Right.
You ain't started the gym.
You gotta start somewhere.
Our kids out here in the street, running the street. Y'all got a gym closed.
We don't.
When we were raised up, that gym was open every day. So that we had somewhere to play. We was out the streets. But now y'all close it down, y'all want a certain period of time for our kids.
Yes, sir. You just hold that discussion and continue on with the fact. Just hold that later, and maybe when bank coverage and, you took first hand that you know what's going on with like some of them.
Sure, and with the regulatory part, what we would do, actually trade this, is to develop a category, a land use category, that would apply to this 18.5 acres. And it would be developed, based on this plan, so it would be another new land use category just for this area. And that'd be for the comprehensive plan. And then what I would do is take an overlay, we'd have 3 overlay districts to implement the 3 areas that John showed you. The primary retail area, primary residential area, and then the transition areas. We develop overlay districts that would allow for higher densities than what's currently allowed. It would allow for the mixed use in like the primary retail area to be able to have commercial at the bottom, residential at the top, and be able to allow additional parking to bring the buildings closer up to the streets. And it would allow, like in the transition zone, that would be residential, but it would allow for a higher density. So you could, and it doesn't affect anything that's there currently, but anything to redevelop or any future development projects in there, it would allow for like townhomes, it would allow for higher density to occur in those areas. And we would set the parking standards and set the road standards all inside those overlay districts. So it would be, everything would be designed and be unique just for that 18.5 acres. And it would apply to that. And so where it would kick in is if somebody came in and wanted to do a development project and use them. And then as John mentioned, we try to roll incentives in there wherever possible. We ever have incentives to encourage redevelopment in these areas.
Is there any kind of coordination with the downtown development and that as design and layout of everything and our studies so that we won't be unique as different downtown over here? Is that a coordination being done in your study, John?
A little bit, to be honest, a little bit. It needs more. It would need more because I think it's really important that with any of these kind of zonings that there's consistency of quality and the look of the street in the way that the community wants it. So right now, we're focusing on the redevelopment basics, but it definitely needs design guidelines. That's something that we would want to see put together for how the street will actually look and the restrictions, very detailed elements. But the answer to your question is we're in touch with the redevelopment agency because half of them are here at the moment. There's several of them, members of the redevelopment agency here. And also, through these presentations that we've made, they've seen every one of those. And they're getting the message that the next question is how do we deliver that? And that's through design guidelines.
Yeah, the city's also looking at updating the CRA plan. And so those design guidelines could actually be implemented through the CRA plan too. That way, anything that would occur in the overlay districts would have to be consistent with design guidelines for the CRA. That's another avenue to get that in place.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And this process, to do the land use change, the change of 18 and a half acres, it's a large-scale land use amendment. We prepare the land use amendment first, and we would send it to the state and go through 3 public hearings. We take a planning commission, a city commission meeting, and transmit it. And those are all public, everybody would be noticed. We provide public comment, public feedback, and then it would come back, the state would review it, it would come back to the city, and we would bring it for adoption, which would be another public hearing, everybody would be noticed. And it would come back, and then at that point, it would be final. It takes about 3 to 4 months to go through that process. And so as it becomes final, we would then take the overlay districts and go through the public hearing process at the same time, where we would take it through the planning commission, present it, we do public notice, get public feedback, and then take it to the city commission for first reading, then come back for a second reading, and then it would be final, and it would be in place. And that would take a couple more months. So total, it's about a 6 to 7 month process to completely change the future land use and apply the overlay districts that would lay on top of this 18 and a half acres, that would actually implement a lot of the details, a lot of the concepts that John talked about today. It would actually allow for it to occur. Any other questions on process? Yes.
Yeah, in the process of actually rezoning, and changing the density, for that 18 acres, I'm looking at one thing, and that's the tax increase. To begin, what would that be?
Sure. Yeah, in the state of Florida, the property appraiser, he cannot increase your taxes based on your actual zoning designation. It's based on physical use of your property. Therefore, the use would have to change on the property before you get a tax increase. Now, overall, the entire area changed, and they did across the board tax valuation to increase the value overall. That's the only way they can do it, unless you build something on that property. Because of zoning or land use, your taxes would not increase. Just because it changed from, say, residential to mixed use, it would not increase just for that. And that is a state law. The property appraiser cannot.
Is there a limitation to build something on the property once it get everything goes ready?
A limitation for
Time
what?
limitation to build on that property.
Oh, the bill? No, there is no time.
Or the, the money that's borrowed from the CRA to put back in, they don't, pay but the burden and tax increase was also the burden on us.
No, that's not cool.
If the biggest, now I've been told, but the tax never said they was having a problem getting money to build their business, but if the business doesn't, stand, their cooperation is closed down within that time period. If not a tax increase on, if the city, within a CR, their money has to be paid back some kind of way, but our taxes will go up.
Well, you probably need to clarify, the CRA does not give money to a property owner to do anything. The property owner has to come up with their own money to do that, so you get a confusion.
Now, you're confused.
No, CRA, but I'm just trying to explain, CRA does not give money to a property owner to do that.
That's not what I said.
If you're concerned with the taxes going up from the
That's what I'm saying, that's not my question, you're confused, that's what I'm.
Yeah, and the CRA generates, you understand the CRA generates revenue, so the base going up.
That's right. Now, don't have to.
I hate to hear the city commission talk about using taxes. We live in a democracy. We didn't, when I moved here in 1971, I had no intentions of staying here. But I'm here, I've been here since 71. And to say that because I don't pay taxes, because I have a homestead exemption, and I don't pay taxes, I buy cigarettes, I buy beer, I buy liquor, I buy gas, I even pay taxes. And for a city commissioner to say that we're going to use, Mayor Frank Page used that excuse on me 40 years ago, that was why we use tax dollars, but tax dollars are generated. We live in a democracy, people, and for us to be saying, using that statement today, that we're only gonna use the tax dollars are being spent where they're generated, then nothing will be spent over in North Fort St. Joe.
I didn't say we don't use tax dollars to be spent with a generator. I said that's where most of the tax dollars are spent. That's what I
When
said.
Commissioner Peters was on the county commissioner, they passed a 4 cent, was it 4 cent or 5 cent gas tax. 90% of that gas tax was spent in Weeward. Black tar roads all down Simpson Avenue. But 90% of the money that was generated through those tax dollars was generated on this end of the county. So we can't say that we're gonna spend money where the taxes are generated. We spend money where it's necessary to spend money. If it needs to be spent on North St. Joe, we spend it over here. So let's not make a statement, a broad statement that could be misconstrued.
And with the CRA too, the CRA, the money is spent inside the CRA.
Yes.
It's generated by the CRA, and as the tax base increases from redevelopment of the CRA, more money goes in there, therefore more money is spent inside that CRA. And CRAs are really great. It's been a great tool throughout Florida to help redevelop areas like this. Is there any other questions regarding the land use process? Yes.
Is it correct that you've already sent out the letters to the affected property owners? And if so, what was the response? Or have you had anyone reply to that?
We sent out just notices for this meeting. Everybody who lives in that 18.5 acres, the 108 parcels, everybody that owns those parcels were notified by the city of mail letters. And we have a list, there's a map up there that has a list of all parcels and all parcel IDs and all the owners. And then the next step will be is to send, there's a form up here on the table for consent to do the land use change and zoning change. The next thing will be for the city to mail that out to everybody and get those responses back. So we do know about that, yes.
You have a list of everyone that attends today.
Yes.
Please look and compare your list that everyone attends today with the next notes that you sent out to let those people know that we sent your notice, you wasn't at this meeting, just in case we want to keep you informed of what's going on. We want to see you at the next meeting.
Exactly.
Try to get
We're definitely gonna
everybody,
know.
because we got less than 10 property owners in here today, it's like only 35, really 30 to 35 people.
Yeah.
There's 20 of them tonight.
No, we do. We want the feedback from each property owner. We want to hear what their feedback is regarding the land use change process. Any other questions? Jim, turn it back over to you.
Just thank everybody for coming out, and if you got any questions, please come see us. We may not have the answer right then, but we'll get somebody to research it for us. We want community involvement. Mr. Davis, close.
On the final note, I want to say that when we look at a blighted community such as what we have on North Fort St. Joe, the first thing we did as a community was come together to see if we can better our community. That was the process that we started. How can we do something better for this neighborhood? So we started the process, and we're still processing what we started. And this is an ongoing thing. It's going to take a while to get it done. So we need the information, we need the participation, not only just from the city, but for every citizen on both sides of the track to make sure that we can make this a Fort St. Joe project. It's not just about one side of town, it's about Fort St. Joe. And like I say, one area has been blighted above all areas, and we need to do something about it. And I'm saying, by bringing it to the table, trying to talk about it, and all the details that's involved in trying to make this area as beautiful as it used to be. I know when I went to the trial, to talk about funds for this neighborhood, I talked about how important North Fort St. Joe was to the community. And we want to restore that, we want to redevelop that. And it's not just an individual thing, it's a Fort St. Joe thing. And I think if we all can come together at the table, let's work together, both sides of town, or however it is, that we can do this. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some commitment. Thank you.
If you were here and did not sign the sign-in sheet, Ms. Leavitt, do you still have them?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. If you have not signed in, please sign in so we can reach you through your email, phone number, or something. We would appreciate it. Thank you, Chester.